when we tell people that we took a year to go to every state and go to a bar and a church in every state, we occasionally do hear people say why. And so, you know, it goes back a long way, but in 2014, I had been working part-time in a church, and I was working full-time as a hotel night auditor. Mindy was working full-time at a lumber yard. And there was a pastoral transition at the church, which was a good thing, but it was also a good thing for me to leave. There was a young couple coming in. I was part-time, but still I was afraid that people would come to me rather than to...
Tall, young Dean.
Yes, the pastor was Dean, but he was 6'7" and 30. So, you know, I didn't want to be old, short Dean. So we were looking for a church, and we were visiting churches, and we thought, you know, this is kind of fun. We haven't, you know, we usually have been committed to a church for years and don't see what God's doing in other places. And at the same time, I remember hearing different people saying, oh, you know, the church in America, it's going the way of the church in Europe. It's going to die. You know, and I thought, you know, that's not true. I don't think it's true of the church in Europe. God has made his church, and he's going to work. But maybe part of the problem is people don't see what's going on in different churches. And so we thought of an idea that we had years before when we had gone to a writer's workshop. And we had talked about we thought of a book called 52 Sundays, going to a church in every state. And we thought we'd still be working our full-time jobs when we get a publisher to pay us to fly to a different state every week. Didn't happen. Who knew? And so then we started talking about this again. And then we said, you know, if we're going to do this, we're going to be going every week to a different state because we're going to go usually to Sunday service. Obviously, we went to other services and other ministries, but we're going to have a lot of time. What else could we do? We thought, well, we like to spend time with non-Christians. And so we thought, where can we go? Everywhere in the United States, big town, small town. You can talk to people.
It was easier in Utah.
It was easier in Utah to find a bar than in Kansas. Yeah. And so we'll go to a bar and a church in every state. And so kind of to practice at least on the visiting a church in every state part, in 2015, every weekend we went to a different church, and we kind of did it thematically. Went to the farthest north, farthest south, farthest east, farthest west church. Yeah, we did a month of churches that we had gone to before or we had been a part of before.
We're youth group kids.
Oh, that's right. We're youth
because
group.
Heather Hall was in Dean's youth group when she was in.
And so we went to churches for a month where I had old youth group kids. And so, you know, that was the theme. And we had a month where we were going to churches where English was not the primary language. And so we were in San Francisco, went to a Chinese evangelical free church, and as we thought, well, now we have to go to Chinese food. And so as we're walking there, this woman who was the hostess at a Italian restaurant called us over and, oh, you got to eat with us. And we started telling the story. Well, no, actually, we have to eat Chinese because told the whole story. And we said, and so next year we plan to go to a church and a bar in every state. And she looked at us and she said, F yeah! It wasn't exactly that. So, okay. There might be even some non-Christians that are interested in this. And so then we really, you know, went in earnest but then we had to get ready for the trip. And so we are doing what we're doing right now.
So, I get to talk about packing for a year-long trip. We are renters. We are like lifelong renters, and so we had to pretty much either get a storage unit or get rid of everything. Those were more or less our two options. We ended up having friends who we promised that if they would store a bin or a tub for us, we would pray for them for the whole year, and this was all we could pay. And so we had 18 bins that about a dozen friends kept. We had some furniture that our son had in his apartment, and a few items that, and one friend kept our movie posters. But other than that, everything we owned needed to fit in our minivan. My method of packing, especially for clothes, is to think about everything, draw little pictures, make lists. Dean's method, and narrow it down to what will fit in this suitcase. Oh, I'll have everything. And then I go shopping a lot during the year. Dean's method is to throw everything at the last minute into trash bags. It worked well for him because our first stop was someplace we could donate a lot of things. And so that worked out really well. Basically, we had in the van our clothes. We had a stand-up laundry hamper that had our camping gear in it, a tent, a couple of sleeping bags, a few other things. We had several tubs that had sundry items like popcorn poppers. We had 2.
So we have the microwave and the kettle corn popcorn poppers. Yes.
This was important. I needed those. We had, I had a tub full of fabric and other sewing and craft items to entertain myself for the entire trip. We had a box that we rarely used full of books that we either were going to read or give away on the trip, and we barely touched that. Because at that point I kind of transitioned into reading everything out of my Kindle. We never quite came into contact with the people we were going to give the books to.
We gave some away.
Yeah, and so we still have some of those books that we haven't read yet. And we had our computer bag with the computer, not this one. That's a story. But we had a computer bag that lived right behind Dean's seat. We had the tire chains, and we had a container that had important documents in it, tax forms, all of the important documents that we didn't store, which is pretty much all of them. But it's amazing how much fits into a computer bag.
Okay. And so, we had to figure out where our first stop was. And if you look at particularly that map, you'll see that the first place.
Yeah, and that map has the first half of the trip.
The first place we were going to go to, we thought, where will we celebrate New Year's? And so we thought, obviously, Las Vegas. And fortunately, we had a friend. I mean, really, what determined more than anything else where we're going to go is there someone who will house us? Because that just...
Do we have a friend? Do we have a friend of a friend? Do we have a friend of a friend of a friend?
Yeah. And so we had a friend from church who worked with someone who worked in Las Vegas. And she said, "Oh, I'd love to have you. I'd love you to have to come to our church." And she told us about her Bible study and all this. Oh, that sounds all great. But then we told her, well, it looks like we're going to Nevada New Year's. And she said, "Oh, I'm going to be out of town." And so we go, oh, man. So we start searching online, at least for people to get to know. We ended up staying in a motel, but who can we, connect bases with? And I found an article in a Las Vegas paper about a woman who had lived on the streets for 20 years. She had been a prostitute, she had been an addict, and then she came to Christ about 6 or 7 years ago, and she began working at the rescue mission. And her ministry that they wrote about in this article was Cookies and Hope, because what she loves to do is bake cookies and then go on the streets in the morning and give them to people and talk about Jesus. And so I found her on Facebook and I said, "Hi Kathleen, you do not know us. Could we please give out cookies with you?" And we got her back, "Oh yeah, that'd be great." So we went to see her. She gave us a tour of the Las Vegas Rescue Mission. We ended up going to church service there as well.
We donated a lot of Dean's clothes to the rescue mission.
We did. And we went out walking with her, and as we were walking along, she came across a guy, and she went and hugged him and greeted him, and they chatted for a while, and she gave him cookies, and then she pulled out, she had a roll of money, and she gave him a $5, and we kept walking, and Kathleen said, "I used to party with him. He hit me in the face once, but he doesn't remember." And I said, "Kathleen, why do you give money? All the people who I know who work with the poor say, you're not supposed to give out cash." She goes, "Oh, I know they say that. But when I was on the street, I said I didn't believe in God. But sometimes I'd be really hungry, and I'd say, 'God, if you're there, can you give me $1 for a hot dog? And so I think, maybe I'm answering someone's prayer. I said, Kathleen, tell us your best story. And she said, of handing out cookies. She said, I guess it was when the man put the gun to my head. Okay, you can tell us that story. So, I was out giving out cookies, and there was I started chatting with a woman, and I said to her, if you ever want to get out of the life, here's my card, give me a call. And she said, oh, no, I'm fine. A couple weeks later, she got a call from this woman. She went to the address she was given. She went, knocked on the door. A man came out, put a gun to her head, and said, do not bother my girl. Yeah. And so she left. And then a couple weeks later, she was driving. Kathleen was driving, and she saw this woman on the street. And she pulled over and said, if you want to get out of this life, get in the car right now. The woman did. She drove her back to rescue mission. Kathleen knew a man in Texas who had said, if you ever need to get anyone out of the state, give me a call. Called the guy, the woman was from Texas. He gave her a ride back to her mother's. This had been, when we saw Kathleen, it had been a couple years before that this had happened. She said she had gotten a call a couple weeks before from this woman who said that she was married now, she had a new baby, life was good. And since then, Kathleen updated some women that she's able to get off the streets.
Well, we got to see her again in September. We went and visited her over a weekend, so we got to see her again. She's good.
And so, bonus for us for having this be our first stop is that immediately when we go to places, they say, do you have any stories? Yeah. and so that was, a good place to start. But, there were, all kinds of people that did show us hospitality. So
which is the thing I can talk about. I'm going to say it really short. If you have the chance to invite somebody to your home, to eat out with somebody, to have someone stay with you, do it. God works that way. So many times that was such a gift to us that someone allowed us to be in their life through the way they showed us hospitality.
Well, and why don't you tell at least one of the stories from Vermont or
okay. Who was asking me about going to a church if anybody had invited us in? We went to a church in Vermont, and we didn't know anybody. We had just kind of randomly picked it.
It was a town where Ben & Jerry's is.
Yeah.
The tour is there.
It's $3, so we were there. We had found a place to stay for that night at a local park, state park, but they didn't have any space for the next several nights, and we needed to be in town for about 3 more nights. And so on Wednesday night, we went to the Bible study at church and got to know some people, and they all asked, so where are you staying? Because obviously we were visitors. And we said, we're staying at the state park, but we only have it for one night. And we were trying not to be pathetic, and we were trying not to ask, because we didn't want to do that. And 3 different people during that hour that we were there, one person invited us to come and said, you can park your van in our parking lot or in our driveway, and you can camp in our yard. Someone else said, we have a camper and you can stay in that. And a third person said, who happened to be the first person who asked us, said, I've got 3 bedrooms in my house, I live alone, do you want to come and stay in my house? So we went to the house.
You didn't try and negotiate, hey, this person's giving me a house, what are you doing?
We didn't have to, so that was good. But it was, and he took us, he and his fiance, well, she wasn't then, but she was shortly after, took us into their life. It took us hiking, took us out for ice cream, took us to the, music on the town square kind of thing. And we became part of that church just for that little week. It was incredible.
Wow.
People would ask us, did you have a favorite place? And of course, oh, well, it's not fair. We had a favorite place. We didn't expect it to be. When we were at a church service in New Mexico, someone on the worship team said, do you have a place for Louisiana?
We did.
And he goes, okay, well, you got to go to Vieux Carre Baptist Church. It's New Orleans. It's in the French Quarter. It's actually one street off Bourbon Street, if you know that area. So we contacted them. They said, yeah, you can,
Well, they have missions trips stay there, so they have like dorm rooms in the building that is the church. It's a storefront kind of a church.
Bunch of bunk beds, and so we heard back and said, okay, yeah, it's $20 a night, but you can do it.
They didn't have any groups there
at that time. So we went to Bible study. At the Bible study, there was a mix of people that looked like church people and looked like street people. And one guy came in, and Tom, the pastor, said, so Leon, where's your friend? And he said, well, he's either in jail or the hospital. And Tom said, okay, we'll hope he's in jail, because that was the better of the two. And he was. And we learned a few months, about a couple months later, that Leon and his friend did end up taking advantage of a service the church did where they had a connection with a rehab place in Arkansas. A farm, where they would work on a farm for a year and sober up and learn skills.
And Leon impressed us. He definitely loved Jesus, but he was still on the street and he still had problems, and he still was dealing with addiction and the things that go with living on the street. But he was part of the church. He was just like all the rest of us who were there. He was a member.
And so on Friday morning, I went with Tom to Louis Armstrong Park, and we had tickets for showers that day. That was the big thing every week is shower day, where they street people can get a shower, and they serve a big lunch, and they have a clothing closet. And so there's one guy who came up who said, I just got out of prison. Do you have jackets? Tom said, oh, yeah, we got jackets. And so had a good time serving. Jambalaya that a fire station had made for the day. Got to serve. Mindy was in the clothing closet with Mama Rose. There's great stories about Mama Rose.
They're in the book.
Yeah. And so when our time there was done, or nearing done, there was a young woman, Lauren. She's 20, and she was working as an intern there, and she was also working in a sandwich shop. And I said, Lauren, what do you like about this church? And she said, I like that it's honest. Every other church I've been to, everyone's trying to pretend that they have their lives all together, that they don't have a problem with sin. These guys, they're on the street. They're addicts. They're alcoholics. Everyone knows they don't have things together. Everyone knows that they need Jesus, and we all need Jesus. And so that was my favorite stops. I think we probably should jump to the things that are takeaways from it.
Oh, okay.
Although the takeaway.
Oh, well, here,
us,
one real quick.
yeah.
We did go to Alaska. We did go to Hawaii. In Alaska, we stayed at a friend's house. He was house sitting for someone else, so we got to stay in his little one-room, almost tiny house. And we were in Fairbanks. When you hear about the midnight sun and how it's daylight all the time, it is. It's amazing. It was 80 degrees while we were there. It was beautiful. Hawaii, we couldn't figure out where we were going to stay. A friend, the kind of friend you have on Facebook who always says the stupid thing. I mean, they're nice and they're wonderful people, but somehow their comment is always just a little off, and it's just like obvious or whatever. the friend who does that said, well, have you tried Airbnb? And we'd tried everything. I thought, of course I've tried Airbnb. I hadn't really tried Airbnb. Airbnb, we found a guy who had tents that he set up in his backyard. He had like a big lot next to his house, right on a tidal stream, 2 blocks from the beach. In Kauai. So we stayed in their tent. It was set up so they had sleeping bags, they had everything. All we had to take was our 2 bags each, or 1 bag each of clothes. So our tent was secure, our computer was safe when it was in there. We'd been really concerned about that because we didn't rent a car. And they had an outdoor kitchen, outdoor shower. They even had plugs and Wi-Fi. So it was amazing and wonderful, and it rained a lot, but we were still dry in the tent, and the coconuts did not fall on us. So the other the takeaway.
But the takeaway for us, for what did God do in our life on the trip, we had some money going in. My mother had passed away a couple of years before, and so we were kind of relying on that. But
we had about $30,000 and a little bit of income that we could anticipate. We could anticipate for the year.
But really, living a year on that is still poverty level stuff by some government statistics, and usually those people aren't planning on going to Alaska and Hawaii. And so that's part of the trip. And so we were, concerned about cash as time is going. I worry more than Mindy does. But as I was, one time when I was particularly were we just idiots to do this? God really wanted us to do this. We probably ignored his will and were just doing something stupid, and I'm an idiot, and went to church in Toledo, Ohio, Sunday morning to a church that is also a bar. The pastor is also the brewmeister. And as we're singing the closing hymn, the bartenders were setting up.
The congregation actually encouraged him to open the bar because they wanted a place to meet.
And so
they're Lutherans.
They're Lutherans. The pastor had been doing a sermon on the Lord's Prayer. He said, all right, today we're going to be focusing on daily bread and God's provision. And so go out of the church, and I'm saying, okay, yeah, God provides whatever. And so that night, we had been spending most of our time with folks from a rescue mission, and they had a guest speaker in, and he said,
their worship service was in the afternoon.
Yeah,
but they didn't have the bar.
They didn't have the bar.
They actually went to the bar with us.
Yeah, the guy who ran the thing did. But the sermon then was on the Lord's Prayer. And he again talked about God provided daily bread. Okay, God, whatever. And so the next Friday night, we were in Michigan, in Dearborn. We went to an Arab service on Friday night. It was in Arabic. They kindly gave us earphones so the associate pastor could translate for us. He wasn't talking on daily bread. He was speaking from the Sermon on the Mount on Matthew 6 on how give no worry about what you should wear or what you should eat. God cares for the lilies of the field. God will take care of you. Don't worry. And that Sunday we're going to church again. And as we're driving there, it's a big mega church. I was saying to Mindy, if that sermon is on Matthew 6, and it was not on Matthew 6, it was not on the Sermon on the Mount, it was on the Sermon on the Plain from Luke, where Jesus talks about, don't worry about what to wear. God cares for the flower, And so we decided, okay, God is with us. God will take care of us. We don't have to worry. Real quick, we just thought three things that we thought kind of what we learned, what we kind of hope that the book and our posts and things will encourage people in the church to do. So the first one.
First one is I forgot that we alternated.
Yep.
Churches should be welcoming and accepting. In almost every bar we went to, someone would say when we asked in bars, what makes for a good bar, and whether you go or not, what do you think would make for a good church? And we, almost every time, people were happy and willing to answer both questions. But almost every time, for what made a good church, after they said that a bar should be kind of like Cheers, which almost everybody said, that it should be a place where everybody knows your name and you feel, almost everybody for a church said, oh, I guess kind of the same thing. It should be accepting. It should be, and usually they were talking about gender-related issues, that it should be accepting that way. Although these were almost always straight people who were saying it. But really what they meant was you shouldn't feel judged when you go to church. Even if you've done stuff wrong, you should feel loved instead. And I realized in the course of the year and even afterward that I grew up in the church. My dad's a pastor. I've gone to church my entire life. I love going to church. And yet, I often feel like I'm going to be caught doing something wrong. That somebody's going to look at me and think that I'm doing something wrong at church. And I think that's the feeling that people who are not in the church have too, that they're afraid that if they come, someone's going to turn around and stare at them. Someone will think that they're not dressed right, even though our websites all say, come as you are, and you know, we all dress any way we want at church. We all feel a little bit, a little bit uneasy, and it's our job as believers and the ones who are in the church to try to help those who are here, whether they're normally there or not, to feel like they're loved and they're being there is something that makes us happy to see each other there.
Yeah,
Oh, that one.
we went to a church in Idaho. We're going to wrap up real quick. In Idaho, where I knew the pastor from Healdsburg. He's another Lutheran. He had a church that was also a gym. The model was that this gym would pay for the church, and so they had. We went to a dance class that they did, and
that was free and open to the public. They also had ones you paid or you were a member of the gym and was part of the program. But this was part of welcoming the community.
And I was talking to Clint about what he thought made for a good church, and he said a church should be indispensable to the community. If the church vanishes, will anyone notice? He said, I know a lot of churches that the only thing I know about them is that they have a flea market every year to raise money for themselves. And said, so we're trying to do things where we offer programs to the community. So if we should go belly up, people will go, oh, that's really sad. Will they notice? And so that was,
Yeah. And see, I looked at it. I'm not good at remembering. I'm so glad for the tools in the modern era. The last takeaway that we had is that all of us need to be spending time in the community, not just where we're comfortable. Neither of us are bar people. Dean has worked in hotels where there were bars as kind of like off on the side as part of the place. So he knew bartenders, he knew, saw folks who came in. I don't know if I had ever ordered a drink at the bar. I certainly never sat at a bar in my entire life until this trip started. It took me about half the year to actually understand how you paid, how you ordered. And we don't either of us like beer, which makes everything more complicated. My point is that for us, spending time in bars, even though we weren't witnessing, that wasn't our purpose. We weren't.
Where does it go anywhere? We have.
oh yeah, that's fine.
Nobody even noticed.
Right.
A little early for a bar.
That's one of the kinds of places, to be out in the community that's not the easy people for us to hang out with. It's not, if say we work with people, getting together with them outside of work is one of those ways.
Yeah, just that